Parents worshipped my sister. Then I found the forged documents. My mom used to say she had 2 daughters and 2 different jobs. One was to shine, and the other was to make sure the shining one doesn't trip. Guess which one I was? I'm Ava, the older daughter, the built-in assistant, the household Roomba with a report card. My sister Lila is 3 years younger, born with a halo my parents polished daily. It started small, like all family poison does. Lila spilled juice? Oh, sweetheart, accidents happen. I spilled juice? Ava, what is wrong with you? Do you want ants? Lila forgot homework? She's creative. School isn't her thing. I forgot homework? You're lazy. You're just like your aunt. Our house had rules written in invisible ink. Lila's feelings mattered. Mine were attitude. Lila's mess was a phase. Mine was disrespect. When I was 9, I got a notebook for my birthday. Not a cute one. A chore notebook. Mom wrote Ava's responsibilities in her tidy teacher handwriting and slid it across the table like a contract. You're old enough to help, she said, smiling like she was being generous. Lila's 9th birthday, she got a new bike and a backyard princess picnic with rented chairs. I remember sitting on the porch steps, watching her open gifts, while Dad leaned down and whispered to me, "Don't make it about you today." Like my face alone was a crime scene. My favorite was the family picture rule. We'd take photos and Mom would say, "Lila, chin up, you're glowing," then glance at me and hiss, "Stand behind, you have angles." I learned to make myself smaller in group photos the same way I learned to make myself quieter at dinner. If Lila laughed too loud, it was joy. If I laughed too loud, Mom's eyes would narrow and she'd say, "Why are you always trying so hard?" The older I got, the more obvious it became that I wasn't their daughter as much as I was their evidence. Proof they weren't bad parents because, look, Ava can do laundry and get straight A's and cook spaghetti. One night, after I stayed up finishing Lila's science project because Mom said, "You're better at that stuff," Dad watched me tape little paper lungs onto a poster board. He patted my shoulder like I was a coworker and said, "You're our practice kid, Ava. You understand." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He didn't laugh back. By 13, I could run the house like a sad little manager. I knew which grocery store had the cheapest eggs, how to unclog the bathroom sink, how to make Lila's hair look effortless for her dance recital. My parents loved telling people, "Ava is so mature." They said it like it was a compliment, not a diagnosis. Lila's dance life was treated like an Olympic training program. Every Saturday, Dad hauled her to studios, competitions, costume fittings. Every Saturday, Mom forgot she'd promised to take me to the library or the mall, or literally anywhere that wasn't support Lila. If I asked, she'd do the big sigh. "Ava, don't start. Lila needs this." Needs. That word was a weapon. When I was 15, I got my first job at a grocery store bagging oranges and collecting stray cart coins like they were treasure. I saved for months because I wanted my own laptop for school. I kept the cash in an envelope in a shoebox under my bed, like a tiny bank run by paranoia. One afternoon I came home and my shoebox was tilted wrong. Not open, just touched. The envelope was thinner. I counted. I counted again. $200 missing. I went to Mom with the kind of trembling bravery you only get when you still think adults care about fairness. She didn't even pretend to be confused. She just kept chopping onions and said, "I borrowed it." "For what?" I asked. Dad was at the table scrolling his phone like he was watching a funny video. Not my life. Mom said, "Lila's dance shoes, the good ones. You should be proud. You're investing in her future." I stared at her. That was my laptop money. Dad finally looked up and smiled like he was explaining gravity. "Ava, you live here. We feed you. You'll get your laptop when you earn it." I almost laughed. I had earned it. That night, I found Lila in her room admiring her new shoes, rubbing the satin like it was sacred. "They're gorgeous," I said, because I was still trained to praise the golden child. She looked up at me, caught the tone, and her smile slid sideways. "Mom said you don't really need a laptop," she said. "You're like, good at school already." It wasn't fully cruel. It was worse. It was casual, like my wants were a rumor. Later, when everyone was asleep, I went looking for my envelope again. Like maybe I'd miscounted. Like maybe reality would apologize. I pulled out the shoebox and found something else shoved under it. A sealed folder, yellowed at the edges, with my name typed across the top. Not Ava in Mom's handwriting. Ava in a printer font. My stomach did that elevator drop thing as I slid it out and saw the words "trust account" stamped on the corner. I should have opened that folder right then, in the dark, with my hands shaking. But fear does this weird thing where it pretends to be patience. I tucked it back like I hadn't seen it and spent the next week acting normal while my brain screamed. When I finally got a moment alone, I opened it on my bed like it was contraband. Inside, a bank statement, a few forms, and one letter from my grandmother's attorney. It talked about funds set aside for Ava's education and disbursement upon graduation. There was even a number. Not millions, but enough to cover community college without selling my soul to student loans. I felt this hot, stupid hope bloom in my chest, like maybe the universe had been quietly saving me. Then I noticed the more recent statement. The balance wasn't what it should have been. It was low, like someone had been taking careful bites out of it. At dinner, I tried to sound casual. "Hey, Mom, did Grandma set up something for me?" Mom's fork froze midair for half a second. Dad's jaw tightened. Lila kept eating, unbothered, like she'd heard this conversation before in a different room. Mom recovered fast, like always. "You've been snooping," she said, voice sweet enough to rot teeth. It's not snooping if it has my name on it, I said. Dad leaned back and gave me the look he saved for waiters who got his order wrong. That money is family money, he said. Your grandmother is dramatic. She likes to pit people against each other. It's for my education, I said, tapping the letter. Mom shrugged. And we use some of it. For emergencies. You know how expensive life is. Lila finally looked up, eyes bright. Is this about the scholarship stuff again? She asked, like I was a broken record. I blinked. What scholarship stuff? Her mouth snapped shut. Mom's eyes flashed warning. Dad said quickly, Ava, you stress yourself out. You always have these stories. My throat went dry. Later that night, I checked our mailbox because paranoia had become my hobby. Inside was a torn envelope addressed to me from my school. The corner was ripped clean like someone had opened it and panicked. I unfolded the letter with that same dumb hope. It was a scholarship offer, a real one, dated 3 weeks ago. I'd never seen it. I stood in the entryway, letter shaking in my hand, and heard Lila upstairs laughing on FaceTime saying, No, Mom handled it. She always handles it. And for the first time, it clicked that my parents weren't just ignoring my future, they were actively managing it. The day I left for college, tiny state school, cheap dorm, maximum loans, my parents acted like they were sending me on a fun little vacation they generously allowed. Mom hugged me for the benefit of neighbors watching from their porches and said loudly, We'll miss you so much, sweetheart. Then, in my ear, she whispered, Don't embarrass us. Lila cried, but not like she'd miss me. More like I was a chair being moved and she didn't like change. Dad handed me a single suitcase and said, You'll be fine. You're independent. That was his favorite compliment because it meant he didn't have to show up. The first semester was brutal. I worked in the library, ate ramen, and learned how to stretch a $20 bill into a week of survival. I also learned what it felt like to exist without constantly scanning the room for who needed what from me. It was quiet, peaceful, terrifying. Then my parents started calling, not to ask how I was, to ask what I could do. Can you write Lila's essay? Can you Venmo us 20 until payday? Can you call the insurance company? They don't listen to me. One time Mom actually said, Since you're just studying all day, you have time. I started saying no in small, careful ways. I can't. I have a shift. I don't have extra. Every no was treated like betrayal. Dad's texts got colder. Mom's calls got longer, filled with sighs and guilt, and after everything we've done. Lila barely contacted me unless she needed something. One night she FaceTimed me from my old bedroom, wearing a new hoodie and smirking. Mom says you're being weird, she said. Like, you're acting like you're better than us. I laughed because the irony almost killed me. I'm acting like I'm broke, I said. Because I am. She rolled her eyes. Just ask Grandma for money, she said. She loves you. That's when I realized Lila knew about the trust. Of course she did. She knew everything. She knew the strings and the rules and how to smile while pulling them. Christmas break, I came home and found my bedroom repurposed into Lila's content room. Ring light, full-length mirror, my bed shoved into the corner like an afterthought. Mom stood in the doorway and said, You're hardly here. Layla needs space for her brand. I slept on the couch, stiff and furious, listening to Dad brag on the phone to an uncle. Lila's got opportunities. Ava's doing her thing. At dinner, Dad set his water glass down and said, We need you to co-sign something. It's just a formality. Mom smiled like it was a family bonding activity. You have good credit, she said, and I felt the floor tilt because I hadn't checked my credit in months, and suddenly I couldn't remember if good was true. Turns out, I did not have good credit. I had a credit score that looked like a dying battery. I found out in the most humiliating way possible, applying for a cheap apartment near campus and getting rejected. The leasing guy glanced at his screen and said, are you sure this is you? Like maybe I was impersonating myself for fun. Back at my dorm, I pulled my credit report and stared at it until my eyes watered. There were accounts I didn't recognize. A card opened when I was 18, a personal loan I'd never taken, late payments, collections. It felt like finding out someone had been living inside your name. I called my dad. Did you open things in my name? Silence. Then the familiar flip. Offense. How dare you accuse us? He said. We did what we had to do. We're your parents. Mom snatched the phone and went straight into performance mode. Ava, honey, you're spiraling. You're stressed. Of course we didn't steal your identity. Then explain the loan, I said. My voice was sharp in a way that made my hands shake. Mom sighed like I'd asked her to do dishes. It was to keep the house, she said. Temporary. We planned to pay it back. But then Lila had nationals and... You used my name to pay for Lila's dance, I said, and the words tasted like metal. Dad jumped back on. Don't be dramatic. It wasn't just dance. It was life. You benefit from the roof too. I laughed. A short, ugly sound. I don't even live there. That's your choice, Mom said quickly. We didn't kick you out. I thought of the scholarship letter, the trust account, the envelope opened and hidden. My brain started connecting dots I didn't want connected. So you sabotaged me, I said quietly. You kept me broke so you could keep using me. Dad's voice went ice cold. Watch your mouth. You owe this family. That night, Lila texted me for the first time in weeks. Heard you're being crazy again. Stop stressing, Mom. I stared at it until the screen dimmed, then replied, Did you know they used my name? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Reappeared. Finally, it's not like that. It's complicated. The next morning, I got an email from the bank, addressed to my parents' house but forwarded to my student email somehow, about a missed payment and possible foreclosure proceedings. My hands went numb, because it wasn't just my credit they'd set on fire. It was the whole house, and apparently they'd decided I'd be the one holding the extinguisher. I drove home on a random Tuesday because anger has a gas pedal. I walked into the kitchen and found Mom at the table with a binder open, smiling like we were about to scrapbook. Dad sat beside her, calm, like a man who hadn't detonated his daughter's financial future. Lila was on the counter eating strawberries, scrolling her phone, not even pretending to care. Mom patted the chair. "Sit," she said. "We're going to talk like adults." I sat because I wanted to see how far the audacity went. Mom slid a document toward me. It was titled Family Loan Agreement. My name was typed at the bottom with a signature that looked like mine if mine had been drawn by someone wearing mittens. "What is this?" I asked. Dad said, "It's proof you agreed to help, so you can't act surprised now." I stared. "I never signed this." Mom's eyes widened in fake hurt. "Ava," she whispered, "why are you lying?" Lila finally looked up, chewing slowly. "You did," she said. "I saw you." Her tone was flat, like she was reading a line in a play. My stomach flipped. "When?" I asked. Lila shrugged. "Last summer. You were home. You're always signing stuff. You don't pay attention." Dad leaned in. "You have a habit of rewriting history when you're upset," he said. "It's unhealthy." There it was. The mental health card. The Ava is unstable narrative they kept polished for emergencies. Mom opened her binder and revealed printed screenshots of my texts. Not the whole conversations, just parts. My frustrated messages, clipped and highlighted like exhibits. She'd even written little notes in the margins. Aggressive, paranoid, projection. She looked at me warmly. "We're worried," she said. "College is making you strange." I wanted to flip the table. Instead, I took out my phone and calmly asked, "Where's the trust money?" Dad's face twitched. Mom said too fast. "Spent. For bills." "How much?" I asked. Lila's foot bounced. Mom snapped, "Enough." Then, like a magic trick, her tone softened. "But good news," she said. "Lila's engagement is coming up. Big family event. We need everyone united." Engagement? I blinked. Lila's eyes flicked away. "You're engaged?" I asked. She smiled without warmth. "To Tyler," she said. "You remember him." I did. Tyler, the boyfriend she swore was just a friend, while Mom compared my awkward college dates to Lila's mature relationship. Dad clapped his hands once. "So," he said, "you're going to help. We need you to contribute. It'll be good for your reputation, too." My reputation. Like I was a brand that needed rehab. Mom leaned closer and whispered, "Don't ruin this for your sister." And in her binder, I saw something else tucked behind the loan agreement. A group chat printout titled Family Plan, with my name circled and the words, "Control the narrative" underlined twice. I shouldn't have gone to Lila's engagement party. Every cell in my body screamed trap. But there's a particular kind of cruelty in being excluded from your own family milestones. Like you're not even worth the lie. So I went. I wore a simple dress, brought a gift, and practiced my neutral face in the car like I was going into court. Their house was full. Aunts, cousins, neighbors. Mom floated around with her perfect mother smile. Dad played grillmaster. Lila sat in the center like a queen accepting tribute. The moment I walked in, Mom kissed my cheek and said loudly, "There she is, our independent girl." Then softer, "Behave." Tyler shook my hand like we'd met at a networking event, not like he'd once asked me for help picking out a ring. Lila watched us with eyes that dared me to say something. Halfway through, Mom clinked a glass and gave a speech. "We are so proud of Lila," she said, beaming. "She's always been our light, our joy, and Tyler just appreciates her the way she deserves." People nodded, smiling. Then Mom's eyes slid to me. "And Ava," she added. "Well, Ava has always been strong. She's had to be." Her tone made it sound like I'd been born with a defect. Laughter bubbled from the crowd. Light, polite, the kind that lands like a slap. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Dad leaned toward a cousin and said, not quietly, "Ava's the serious one. Lila's the lovable one." More laughter. Something in me snapped, but not in the dramatic screaming way. In the quiet, surgical way. I pulled out my phone, opened Facebook, and found Mom's post from earlier. A photo of Lila in her ring, captioned, "My golden girl finally gets her fairy tale." Comments flooded in. Hearts, "Congratulations. You raised her so well." I looked at my mother across the yard, laughing, holding court, and I commented under her post, "Congrats to Lila. Quick question, when are you paying back the accounts you opened in my name?" My thumb hit send before my fear could tackle it. Time slowed. My phone buzzed instantly, notifications exploding. Cousins looked down at their screens. Someone gasped. Mom's smile froze mid-sparkle. Dad's eyes went predator sharp. Lila's face drained, then hardened. She stood up fast, chair scraping. "Ava," she hissed. "Are you kidding me?" Mom glided toward me like a shark in heels. "Sweetheart," she said through her teeth, still smiling for the crowd. "Come inside. You're having an episode." An episode. There it was, served cold in public. Tyler blinked, confused. My aunt murmured, "What did she mean? Accounts?" And my cousin whispered, "Holy, she posted receipts?" Because someone had already screenshotted my comment. Mom grabbed my wrist and squeezed, nails digging in, and I realized she wasn't pulling me inside to talk. She was pulling me inside to bury me. Inside the house, the perfect family mask slid off like a dropped curtain. Dad slammed the door and said, "Delete it." Mom's voice went syrupy dangerous. "Now, Ava, before people misunderstand." Lila stood by the stairs, arms crossed tight, like she was holding herself together with spite. I looked at all three of them and felt something eerie. Calm. "No," I said. Dad took a step toward me. "You're going to ruin your sister's engagement over a misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding," I said. "It's fraud." Mom's eyes flared. "Stop using dramatic words," she snapped. "We're family." I turned to Lila. "Did you know?" I asked again. Quieter. Her jaw clenched. "I knew there were bills," she said. "Mom said you agreed. She said you'd help because you're the responsible one." There was pain in her voice, the kind that comes from believing a lie because the truth would break your world. "I never agreed," I said. "They forged it." Lila's eyes flicked to Mom, then away. "I didn't forge anything," Mom said quickly. Too quickly. Dad barked, "Enough. Delete it or you're out." I laughed. "Out of what? The couch I sleep on when you take my room?" Dad's face went red. Mom stepped closer, whispering like she was blessing me. "Ava, people already think you're unstable," she said. "Do you want employers seeing this? Do you want landlords? Do you want everyone knowing you have issues?" She tapped her temple. Lila's mouth trembled, and for a second she looked younger than she'd ever allowed herself to look. "Just delete it," she said softly, and it hit me like a gut punch because it wasn't cruelty. It was fear. Fear of losing the only love she'd been fed. I almost caved. Then my phone buzzed again. A message request from someone named Aunt Marcy, Grandma's lawyer. Subject line, "Urgent, disbursement request filed under your name." My blood went cold. I opened it and saw a scanned form attached. My name typed, my signature at the bottom, and a bank routing number I'd never seen. Someone had just tried to move money out of my trust. Recently. Today. I looked up at my family, and Mom was watching my screen like she could will it shut. "What did you do?" I asked, voice low. Dad's eyes flickered toward Mom. Lila's face crumpled like she'd been holding her breath for years, and finally couldn't. "Ava," she whispered. "They said it was the only way. They said if the trust didn't cover it, they'd lose everything." The "they" hung in the air, and then I understood. The trust wasn't just drained, it was being actively siphoned, and someone in this room had access to paperwork they shouldn't. I left the party without saying goodbye. I walked out past the stunned relatives, past Tyler standing alone like he'd just realized he proposed into a minefield, past Mom calling after me, "Don't you dare," like I was her remote-controlled property. In my car, I opened the form again and zoomed in on the signature. It wasn't mine. It was mine-ish, like someone had practiced. My hands shook so hard I could barely start the engine. On the drive back to campus, I called Aunt Marcy. She answered on the second ring, voice tight. "Ava, thank God," she said. "Did you authorize this disbursement?" "No," I said. "Absolutely not." She exhaled like she'd been holding a scream. "They submitted it through an online portal using your personal verification answers," she said, "which means someone has your information." I almost laughed because of course they did. Marcy continued. "I froze the account. But there's something else. There's a power of attorney on file." "What?" I nearly swerved. "A POA granting your mother authority to act on your behalf," she said, careful. "It was filed right after you turned 18. I pulled over into a gas station and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel like it might explain my life. "I never signed a POA," I said. "I didn't even know what that was at 18. "That's what I thought," Marcy said quietly. "I'm not saying it's fraudulent, but..." "It's fraudulent," I said, voice shaking. "It has to be." Marcy told me to get a lawyer, to file an identity theft report, to stop communicating with my parents except in writing. I hung up and just sat there, breathing hard. My phone lit up with texts. "Dad, you humiliated us." "Mom, call me. We can fix this if you calm down." "Lila, please don't do this. Tyler is freaking out." I stared at Lila's message and felt this weird split inside me, rage at her complicity, and ache for the kid she used to be before the golden child role calcified her. I replied, "Did you sign anything for them?" 3 dots appeared instantly like she'd been waiting. Then nothing. Then finally, "I don't know what you mean." The lie landed so clean it almost sounded like truth. I drove back to campus and printed everything. Credit reports, the fake loan agreement, the trust disbursement request, the POA notice Marcy emailed me. I spread it out on my dorm floor like a crime scene and realized my parents hadn't just favored Lila. They'd built a whole system where I existed as a resource. And now that I was trying to step out of it, they were tightening the cage. My parents didn't call a week later. They showed up. I opened my dorm building door and saw Mom and Dad standing there with matching grim smiles, like they'd rehearsed in the car. Lila was behind them, eyes puffy, mascara smudged, holding a tote bag like she'd been dragged into this as evidence. Mom stepped forward, voice loud enough for the lobby. "Ava, honey, we were so worried. You wouldn't answer." Students glanced over. Mom did the concerned mother face like she was auditioning. "You're scaring us," Dad added, like I was a runaway pet. I kept my voice flat. "You need to leave." Mom's smile tightened. "We brought paperwork," she said, tapping her purse, "to clear up your confusion." They followed me upstairs anyway because boundaries were always suggestions in our family. In my tiny room, Dad placed a folder on my desk. Inside were printouts of my Facebook comment, now cropped, circled, highlighted, like I'd committed a hate crime. There was also a letter, typed, signed, from a campus counselor. It said I'd been experiencing paranoia and delusional thinking. My stomach flipped. "This isn't real," I said. Mom's eyes widened with innocent outrage. "How dare you?" she whispered, and then she started crying. Perfect, controlled tears. "We only asked for help," she said, "because you're not yourself." Lila stood near the door, trembling. Dad pointed at the letter like it was a judge's ruling. "If you keep accusing us," he said, "we will have to pursue guardianship, for your own safety." I stared at him. "Guardianship," I repeated, "over a 20-year-old. Mom nodded, wiping tears. "Sweetheart, you've always struggled," she said softly, like she was telling a sad story about a sick puppy. "You forget. You misremember. You get intense." I felt sick because it wasn't new. They'd been planting that narrative for years. Every time I protested unfairness, I was overreacting. Every time I cried, I was unstable. Now they were turning it into paperwork. I looked at Lila. "Did you know they were coming?" I asked. Her eyes darted to Mom. Dad answered for her. "Lila begged us to help you," he said. Lila flinched like he'd slapped her with words. Mom reached for my hand. I pulled back. She sighed dramatically and said, "If you won't listen privately, we'll have to handle this publicly." And Dad added, "Your RA is already aware." My throat tightened because I realized they weren't here to negotiate. They were here to isolate me. Then my phone buzzed with an email from Marcy. "POA signature mismatch suspected. Need copy of your driver's license immediately." Mom's eyes flicked to my screen again, and her tears stopped mid-drop. The next month was a blur of adult tasks I never should have had to learn from scratch. Police reports, fraud affidavits, freezing my credit, meeting with a lawyer who spoke in calm sentences while my insides screamed. My parents responded by turning into a PR firm. They posted photos of family dinners without me. Captions like "grateful for my girls," and relatives commented, "hope Ava gets the help she needs." Help. Like my personality was a broken appliance. One afternoon, my RA pulled me aside and said carefully, "Your mom called the office. She sounded concerned." I forced a smile and said, "She's very into sounding concerned." The worst part was how familiar it all was. They weren't improvising. They were using the same tools they'd always used: shame, fear, reputation. I started getting messages from extended family. An uncle wrote, "Your parents say you're accusing them of theft. That's serious. Are you okay?" A cousin sent me a screenshot of a group chat. Mom had written, "Ava is having a mental health crisis. Please don't encourage her delusions." I stared at it until my hands went cold. Lila texted me late one night. "I can't sleep." I typed back, "Neither can I," then erased it and wrote, "Did you sign the POA?" She replied immediately, "No." Then another message. "But I saw it. It's real. Mom showed me. It's notarized." That word, notarized, hit me weird, because notarized doesn't mean true. It means someone watched somebody sign something. Somebody, not necessarily me. I asked my lawyer about it, and she raised an eyebrow. "Notaries get duped," she said, "or bribed, or they're friends." I wished I was surprised. Then, as if my life needed extra seasoning, a woman from my hometown called me out of nowhere. Mrs. Keene, our old neighbor. "Ava," she said, voice shaky, "I don't know if I should be calling, but I saw your mother's post. And I can't stop thinking about something." My stomach tightened. "What?" I asked. She hesitated. "When you were little," she said, "your dad used to come home late. A lot. And your mom would be outside furious, waiting. One night I heard her screaming, 'You chose her over your own child.'" My skin prickled. "Who?" I asked. Mrs. Keene swallowed. "I don't know," she said, "but the next day your mom told everyone you were difficult, like she needed an excuse for her anger. Honey, I think the way she treats you started before you even did anything." I sat on my bed staring at the wall, realizing there might be a secret underneath the favoritism, something older than Lila, older than dance recitals and chore notebooks, something that explained why my mother looked at me like a reminder she hated. I did the DNA test as a joke at first, one of those late-night fine universe show me moments. I spit into the tube, mailed it off, and forgot about it until the results email hit my inbox 2 weeks later like a brick. I opened it on my laptop in a quiet corner of the library and felt my heart crawl up into my throat. My dad wasn't my biological father. I read it 3 times, sure I was misreading. Not related, 0%. My hands started shaking so badly I had to press them flat on the table. The world didn't tilt. It shattered. Suddenly Mrs. Keene's memory made sense. Suddenly my mother's resentment had a shape. I called Marcy. She went silent, then said quietly, "Your grandmother suspected. She tried to tell your father to be honest, but what?" But he chose silence. I sat there, staring at the screen, thinking about Dad's favorite line. "You're independent." Like he'd been distancing himself with words for years. I didn't call my parents. Not yet. I called Lila. She answered on the first ring, voice tight. "Are you okay?" she asked, and for a second she sounded like a real sister, not a rival. "I took a DNA test," I said. Silence. Then Lila whispered, "Oh." That one syllable carried a whole confession. "You knew," I said, not a question. Lila's breath hitched. "I didn't know," she said fast, then slower. "I knew there was talk. Mom said not to ask questions." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "Of course she did." Lila started crying. "It's not like I wanted She began, then stopped, like she couldn't find a sentence that didn't sound awful. I took a shaky breath. Is Dad your biological dad? I asked. Her crying paused. Yes, she whispered. There it was. The golden child wasn't golden because she was better. She was golden because she was safe. She fit the picture. I was the stain. I hung up before my voice could break in a way I'd regret. That night, Dad texted me out of nowhere. Stop harassing your sister. Your mother is distraught. I stared at his message and realized he wasn't even curious if I was okay. He just wanted me quiet. Like always. The next day, my lawyer called and said, we pulled the POA signature image from the county. You need to see this. She emailed it. I opened the scan and my stomach dropped again because the signature didn't look like mine at all. It looked like someone trying to imitate mine while writing with their left hand. And in the margin, in tiny print, was the notary's note. Signed in presence of agent. Agent, not principal. Someone else signed for me, and it was filed anyway. While all this was happening, my grandmother died. I found out the way I found out most family news. By accident, through a distant cousin's Instagram story. A photo of flowers, a church, the caption, "Rest easy, Nana." My chest went hollow. Nobody told me. Not Mom, not Dad, not Lila. I called Marcy, voice shaking. Why didn't anyone tell me? Marcy sighed. I tried, she said. Your mother said you were unstable and it would set you back. She told the funeral home not to contact you. I felt my hands curl into fists. Even grief had gatekeeping in my family. Then Marcy said, Ava, there's another reason I called. She paused. Your grandmother left you something. My breath caught. The trust? I asked. Not just the trust, she said. Her house. I sat down hard on the edge of my bed. What? Marcy continued. She updated her will last year. She left the house to you and set aside funds for property taxes and upkeep. She wrote a letter explaining why. My mouth went dry. Did my parents know? Marcy's silence answered. They filed something, she said carefully. A challenge, claiming undue influence, claiming your grandmother wasn't in her right mind. I laughed, but it came out broken. So they're doing to her what they did to me. Marcy sent me the letter. I read my grandmother's words with tears blurring the screen. She wrote about favoritism, about my parents using Ava as a financial instrument, about being afraid they'd consume her future. It was the first time an adult in my family had named what was happening without dressing it up. I cried so hard my ribs hurt. When I finished, there was a knock at my dorm door. I opened it, and there was Lila. Not in her perfect engagement outfit, just sweatpants, red-eyed, clutching her phone like it was a life raft. I shouldn't be here, she whispered, but Mom she's freaking out. I stepped aside and let her in because curiosity is my worst habit. Lila sat on my desk chair and said, They're saying Nana's house is theirs. They're saying you manipulated her. I stared. I haven't spoken to Nana in months because Mom blocked my number, I said. Lila nodded, crying harder. I know, she said. Then she pulled up something on her phone and turned it toward me. A text thread between her and Mom. Mom had written, If Ava gets Nana's house, we lose everything. Do what you have to do. My stomach turned. Lila's voice broke. I didn't do anything, she said. But I think they did. I think they filed things under your name again. She swiped, hands shaking, and showed me an email draft in Mom's account addressed to the probate court. Signed Ava. Court smells like paper and cold coffee and people pretending they're not terrified. My lawyer sat beside me, calm as a metronome. Across the room, Mom and Dad sat with their attorney, wearing their concerned parents' outfits like costumes. Mom in soft beige, Dad in a navy blazer, Lila in pale pink like she was auditioning for innocent daughter number 2. When the judge entered, Mom dabbed at her eyes dramatically. Dad put an arm around her. It was theater, the kind my family specialized in. Their attorney stood and said, This is a deeply unfortunate situation. Our clients are concerned about Ava's mental stability and her susceptibility to manipulation. My lawyer didn't flinch. She slid evidence into the record. Credit fraud, account openings, forged signatures, the attempted trust disbursement. Mom shook her head slowly, like she was watching me self-destruct. When it was her turn, she stood and said, voice trembling perfectly, Ava has always struggled. She's imaginative. She gets confused. The judge looked at her and asked, Do you have medical documentation? Mom smiled sadly. We do, she said. Then she produced a folder. Therapy notes from when I was 16. Notes I didn't know existed. Notes describing me as emotionally volatile and paranoid about family dynamics. I felt sick because I remembered that therapist. Mom picked her. Mom sat in the waiting room every time. Mom probably talked to her more than I did. The judge flipped through the pages, eyebrows pinching. My lawyer leaned toward me and whispered, We'll challenge admissibility. Don't react. But my heart was hammering. This was their plan. Make me look crazy, so their crimes looked like caretaking. Then the judge asked about the POA. Who signed this? He asked, holding up the document like it was a dead fish. Dad said smoothly, Ava did. My lawyer stood. We have a signature analysis request pending, she said. The judge nodded, then glanced at the notary stamp. This indicates the principal was not present, he said. A crack appeared in my father's calm. Mom's mouth tightened. The judge's gaze shifted to Lila. Ms. Lila, he said, you were listed as a witness on one of these filings. Can you explain? Lila's face drained. She looked at Mom like she was 12 again, waiting for permission to breathe. Mom's eyes were sharp, warning. Lila stood slowly, hands shaking, and said, I don't remember. The judge stared. You don't remember witnessing a legal document? Lila's voice cracked. I was told it was paperwork. For the family. My stomach clenched because she was right at the edge of saying the truth, and I could see the fear of losing everything. The love, the status, the fairy tale, pulling her backward. The judge set the POA down and said, We will recess until the signature examiner's report is submitted. Mom's hand shot out and grabbed Lila's wrist hard enough that Lila flinched. I saw it. The judge saw it too. His eyes narrowed slightly as Mom smiled and said, Sorry, nerves. And I realized the next part wouldn't be about money or houses. It would be about which daughter my parents were willing to sacrifice when the lies stopped working. The signature examiner's report arrived like a verdict in an envelope. My lawyer opened it first, read silently, then looked at me with a face that said, You're going to hate this. The POA signature was not written by you, she said. Relief flooded me so fast I almost laughed. Then she continued, It matches a known sample from your sister. The air left my lungs. I stared at her. No, I said, like denial could be a shield. In court, the judge read the report aloud. Mom made a small choking sound. Dad stared at the table like it might open and swallow him. Lila sat rigid, hands clenched, eyes fixed forward. My lawyer presented the email draft Lila had shown me, the text from Mom, do what you have to do, and the attempted disbursement form. The judge's tone sharpened. Ms. Lila, he said, did you sign this power of attorney? Lila's throat bobbed. She looked at Mom. Mom's expression was pleading now, not threatening. Different mask, same manipulation. Dad's jaw clenched like he was holding back rage. Lila whispered, I didn't want to. The courtroom went still. The judge leaned forward. Answer the question. Lila's voice broke. Yes, she said. I signed it. My body went numb. Part of me wanted to stand up and scream at her, to list every stolen moment, every crazy label, every time she benefited while I bled. Another part of me watched her shoulders shake and realized she wasn't just the golden child, she was the leash. Mom burst into tears. She did it because Ava was unstable, she sobbed. We were protecting her. The judge's eyes went flat. By committing fraud, he said. Dad finally snapped and hissed at Lila, not quietly. You idiot. Lila flinched like he'd hit her. That was the real moment, the private face spilling into public. The judge ordered an investigation, froze the contested assets, and warned my parents about criminal referral. People started gathering their papers, murmuring, as if this was entertainment and not my entire life. In the hallway, Lila grabbed my sleeve. Her fingers were cold. Ava, she whispered, eyes red. I thought if I did it, they'd stop. They said if I didn't, they'd go after you harder. They said you'd end up institutionalized. I stared at her hand on me and felt years of rage and grief collide into something sharp and ugly. So you forged my life to save me, I said, voice shaking. Lila flinched again, tears spilling. I know, she whispered. I know it doesn't sound like anything, I cut in. It is what it is. Mom stormed past us, sobbing dramatically, calling my name like she was the victim. Dad followed, jaw tight, not looking at either of his daughters like we were real people. Lila let go of my sleeve like it burned. My phone buzzed. A new email from my father's address. Subject line, final offer. I didn't open it, not yet. I walked out of the courthouse into cold air, feeling both lighter and more hollow. And when Lila whispered, What happens now? I realized I didn't have an answer that wouldn't hurt us both.